Let's take another look at our tier list for patch 1370 and see who the biggest winners and losers were in this patch and see how all the changes affected our tier list. Let's get straight into the top lane, and in the S tier we have Aatrox, Camille, Darius, Fiora, Alawi, Kled, Malphite, Olaf, Pantheon, Poppy, Renekton and Tryndamere. Goredrinker and Stridebreaker users like Renekton and Darius only got better with the buffs to these items this patch, and if they weren't already two of the best top laners in the game, they definitely are now. Now if you aren't already playing or banning either of these picks, you should probably add them to your champion pool. They are incredibly strong, they're very hard to shut down, and once they get a bit too fed, they can easily 1v2, 1v3, dominate side lanes and get stuck into teamfights too. It was pretty expected that Tryndamere was going to be a bit of a handful this patch with 50 extra attack range added last week, and it's safe to say that he bounced back with a vengeance. Tryndamere is one of those snowbally solo carry top laners you just never really want to come up against, because if he does get a bit too fed in the early game, he starts diving you and diving you and diving you until you FF 15. Riot have already confirmed there's going to be some nerfs for Tryndamere next patch, but until then, just keep abusing it. It was also expected that Aatrox would come back strong this patch too with the magical damage he now has in his kit. He's had a pretty turbulent season, going through periods of being absolutely broken and then other periods being a bit underwhelming, but right now he's definitely in one of his stronger patches. He's got a couple of different builds you can go for, like the Eclipse Lethality build or the Goredrinker Black Cleaver Bruiser build, but whichever one you do decide to play, Aatrox can be a real handful. A champion that might not strike you quite as a solo carry like the other ones we've just mentioned is Poppy, but she is definitely queen of the tanks in the top lane. She can easily weak side games and absorb pressure, or she can actually set up ganks, play for Poppy, play for top lane and carry easily too. She has a boatload of disruption in fight, she has anti-mobility with her W, she has reliable CC, and if that wasn't enough, she also has fantastic objective control with her ultimate too, knocking away the enemy team and allowing her team to secure those barons and dragons easier. So if you are looking for a top lane tank to play, Poppy is just a no-brainer. Over to the jungle now, and in the god tier we have Jarvan and Rek'Sai. In the S tier we have Bel'Veth, Evelynn, Fiddlesticks, Kayn and Kha'Zix. Kayn isn't quite as impressive at the very lower ranks, but as you get to Platinum, Emerald and Diamond, he's still maintaining a very impressive success rate. So much so that Red Kayn is being nerfed next patch. Kindred definitely did get hit quite hard this patch with her nerfs, but we are going to keep her in the A tier. Jarvan was already in a great spot, but with the buffs and changes to Goredrinker and Spear of Shojin, he's been absolutely ridiculously and utterly broken this patch. He's got early ganks and great snowball potential, which he already had, but then once he gets a few items, he becomes unkillable. He has unlimited CC and mobility with those constant EQs being on such a low cooldown. And because his EQ CC knockup combo doesn't count as an immobilizing ability, that's why Spear of Shojin is so good on him. It'll be interesting to see just how hard he gets nerfed next patch, but for the time being, if you're playing jungle and you're not playing or banning him, you need to ask yourself why. Rek'Sai just seems to have plot armor this split so far. She's been one of the best junglers in the game for the last few months, and this isn't changing anytime soon. She is no way near as popular as the likes of Jarvan, Lee Sin, Kha'Zix and Kayn, but if you look at her win rate across the last few patches, it's been one of the highest in the game for any jungler. So if you are having success and enjoying Rek'Sai, there's no reason to play anyone else. Bel'Veth has come back up to the S tier this week, with that Kraken into Stridebreaker build giving her so much damage and durability too. Bel'Veth has always been a pretty solid option in solo queue, where she can either get super fed super easily, or she can actually just scale up into a hyper attack speed monster in the late game. She clears exceptionally quickly, she has solid early ganks, she's very hard to shut down because of her E giving her so much damage reduction, and she melts through dragons and rift heralds. Kha'Zix definitely did get hit with the nerfs last patch, but he's still in the S tier and he's still having great success in the majority of ranks. We all know what a good and fed Kha'Zix is capable of, stealthing through to backlines and one-shotting isolated carries. It's as simple as that, but with his mobility, his stealth, his poke, and his damage of course, he can be a real problem. So although he may be a little bit weaker, he's still a great jungler to play. We also wanted to talk about Nocturne. Now we've spoken in previous tier list videos about how underrated this pick is, but he only got even stronger with the buffs to his core item Stridebreaker. Axiomarch is also performing better after a series of buffs too, and although he's a bit more famously known for his low elo stomping, his impressive performances are leaking into those higher ranks too. We were tempted to move Nocturne up to the S tier, but we're going to give it one more week and see how he fares going into 13-18. Well, let's dive into the mid lane now, and in the S tier we have Ahri, Akshan, Cassiopeia, Lux, Neeko, Pantheon, Swain, Sylas, Taliyah and Zed. Naafiri continues to be a strong pick in the mid lane despite her nerfs, so we've kept her in the A tier for now. Vex's buffs brought her up to the A tier and she's a lot stronger than most people think, so she's definitely one to watch out for. Orianna moves up to the S tier in high elo, but still sits in the A tier for now in this tier list for the majority of ranks. If you do want to see our high elo tier list in full, then click the first link in the description. Akshan's adjustments last week were aimed to be a bit of a nerf, but they actually ended up buffing him. All they did was nerf his AD per level a little bit and give him a bunch more defensive stats per level instead. He is definitely a lot more popular in the mid lane than he is in the top lane right now. He's got a very impressive ban rate and a very impressive win rate too. He can bully lanes in the early game, he can roam with his stealth and mobility, and if he does get fed, he one-shot backlines and revive his team in the process. Lux's buffs last week have made a pretty significant difference, and now she's shot up into the S tier. She's got fantastic wave clear, amazing long range poke and burst, great catch potential, and she scales well into any game too. One thing about Lux is she is a little bit more situational than some other mid lane mages, because if she does go against those high mobility assassins that can dodge her combos and take her down, she can be really hard to execute. But in the right games, in the right matchups and the right drafts, Lux is having a fantastic patch. Sylas has really shot back up into those top tiers too this week. You can still go for the classic Everfrost build, or you can go for a Rod of Ages scaling build, or you can go for flat out burst with Night Harvester. Whichever build you decide to go for, whichever lane you play into, as long as you've got the right ultimates to steal, you can easily carry any game if you're good enough. Sylas has fantastic early skirmishing power, in early ganks or fights in the river, or early roams to the bot or top lane. He has a great kit, and once he gets a bit too fed, he snowballs insanely hard, with crazy amounts of self-healing on his W and ridiculous amounts of burst damage too. So if you are looking for a new mid laner to play this patch, we'd recommend going for Sylas. Moving down to the bot lane next, and starting off with those AD carries. In the S tier we have Ashe, Ezreal, Kai'Sa and Vayne. Neela is still proving how good she can be in the right games, but remains a bit too situational for the S tier. Karthus continues to be a real force in the bot lane too, but due to a bit less popularity at lower ranks, he's going to stay in the A tier. Now if you are an AD carry main, I'm sure you've already been playing Vayne over recent weeks. She just seems to be getting better and better with a ton of item diversity and a pretty smooth lane phase in the current meta. Vayne is all about that mid to late game scaling, single target burst damage, self peel, kiting and basically showing off in front of your friends. She feels fantastic once you get out of that lane phase smoothly. But the thing is, she's actually better and stronger in 2v2s in the early game now too. With Shiv eliminating her wave clear weaknesses and Triforce giving her some burst and durability, it's opened up a new way to play her. Or alternatively, you can just go for the anti-tank Rageblade Blade the Ruin King build. And whichever one you go for, you'll quickly understand just how good Vayne is right now. Samira's buffs last week alongside the buffs to Immortal Shieldbow have definitely made a difference. She has been a bit underwhelming for a while now, and these buffs were probably long overdue. But you do have to be careful buffing someone like Samira, because she's one of those really coin flip snowballing AD carries that can dominate games so quickly if she gets a bit too fed early game. Now Samira has been winning more games, but she's not quite consistent enough to make it to the S tier. But that's not to say you shouldn't be playing her, especially if you have the right support alongside you. Samira with Rel, Nautilus or any aggressive CC heavy tank is a match made in heaven. So if you are playing duo queue with a support main, it's a great time to play Samira again. Another AD carry reaping the rewards of how good static Shiv is Severe. With her Q, her W and Shiv, she has a ridiculous amount of wave clear, so she can farm and scale up like a dream and turn into that mid-game utility AD carry damage AoE monster that she was always meant to be. Sivir is an incredibly consistent marksman to play. She's very safe in lane with that spell shield giving her so much survivability, and although she may not be the best duelist, she really does scale into the game super well. Sivir works into pretty much any team comp too, so if you do have a very aggressive top side of the map, Sivir could be the perfect pick to go for. Finally, let's have a look at support, and in the S tier we have Blitzcrank, Janna, Maokai, Rakan, Rel, Soraka, Thresh, Xerath and Zyra. Rakan and Rel continue to be two of the most dominant supports to play in the game, and have been for quite some time now. Xerath received some nerfs last patch, but guess what? It didn't really make a difference. This guy has been stomping, poking and dominating bot lanes ever since those big mana changes to his passive, and his recent success rate is pretty damn impressive. The biggest change they made to Xerath though was the extra charges of his ultimate. It gives him so much more damage, and if you combine it with your teammates' initiation and engages, it's so hard to miss them, and so hard for your enemies to dodge them too. Xerath can be infuriating if you are good enough to play him in lane and consistently land that poke. So if you haven't tried him yet since those changes last month, it's time to give him a go. Blitzcrank's adjustments last week made a big difference too. Now he may have a little bit less damage in those early fights because they removed all the attack speed from his W, but he's much more tanky now and has much more of a front-lining nature, which let's be honest suits Blitzcrank far more. His performances recently over the last week since the update have made a pretty big difference, and he's in a much better spot now. Now he wasn't exactly bad, he was sitting in the A tier, but now he's sitting comfortably in the S tier with one of the most impressive win rates in the game for any support. Blitzcrank will always be viable in the right hands if he lands those hooks consistently, whether it's stomping the lane phase with early kills or just waiting for that clutch moment to land the perfect hook right before a big Baron fight. You just can't really go wrong playing Blitzcrank right now unless you really are that bad at landing hooks. Finally, we also wanted to talk about Soraka, who recently has been having an absolutely fantastic time in the bot lane. Soraka just has unrivaled amounts of sustain and healing. She really fulfills that medic playstyle, charging towards her allies and keeping their health topped up and happy. She can save her teammates from across the map and influence games early than most other supports. But not only that, she scales incredibly well too, dishing out crazy amounts of sustain in the mid to late game. Soraka is one of those supports that enemy teams simply have to focus, because she can keep her teammates alive for so long with the crazy amounts of healing she offers. So if you do enjoy this enchanter type healing focused playstyle, there's no better support to play than Soraka right now. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of our patch 13.17 updated tier list video. We hope you guys are enjoying the grind this split, and we'll see you all in the next video. Good luck, have fun, and as always, take care.